Myo Renge Kyo Nam Myo Renge Kyo Nam Myo Renge Kyo. Hello everyone. So let's continue. Again, we're talking about the Medicine King chapter. This, I believe, is part 2. And we'll start with Mount Sumeru is golden in color. Every creature that comes to this mountain, whether ox or horse, human or heavenly being, bird or any other being, inevitably loses its original color and takes on the golden color of the mountain. This is not true of any other mountains. In the same manner, the various other sutras, when placed beside the Lotus Sutra, lose their original color. They are like black objects that, when exposed to light of the sun or the moon, lose their color. So the teachings concerning rebirth in another land, or an attainment of Buddhahood that color these other sutras inevitably loses their meaning and when exposed to the light of the Lotus Sutra. That's an exceptionally important paragraph, and I'm going to take it apart a little bit for you. Again, it is not that the other sutras, other scholarship of Buddhism is unnecessary. Nichiren is a very example of how necessary it is. This is all of Nichiren's teaching, is constantly referring to other sutras, not only to place the importance of the lotus in all of the teachings, but to demonstrate that all of them eventually lead to the lotus. And the lotus stands as the ultimate teachings because of all of the other teachings. Okay? So they lose their color because they are no longer the primary practice. It's not that they fade away completely and are useless. They're useless in terms of this latter day and the proper practice of Buddhism because of the Lotus Sutra. But they're essential to understanding the depth of that Lotus Sutra. Okay? Just like calculus in particle physics and astronomy is essential to the maths and the understandings of the discoveries of science. But that doesn't mean that multiplication and division and addition and subtraction and fractions and algebra and geometry are useless. They're all inculcated into calculus. And before you can begin to understand calculus, you need to study all of those other maths. Do you see? This is why I use math a lot as an analogy to Buddhist scholarship, because it's built in the same way. Okay. Also, he specifically calls out earlier teachings concerning rebirth in another land, Amida, or the attainment of Buddhahood that there was at one time in the early sects and the early teachings of Buddhism, the idea, and often labeled Hinayana and many Theravadist cults, still believe that attainment of full awakening, Buddhahood, comes only after one leaves this life, after death. This is completely wrong. I mean, Buddha himself, Shakyamuni Buddha, his whole motivation for Buddhism was to live this life well. So the idea that you have to leave this life to get there, wherever this there is so mind-bogglingly wrong in Buddhism. This is the path of religions, to mystify life as some kind of atonement, so that one day when you finally die, you'll finally get to where it is you're going. That's such hogwash. It's simply not Buddhism, okay? So I'll continue. Third is the analogy of the moon. Among the various stars some can light an area of no more than half a ri, some an area of no more than 1 ri, some an area of no more than 8 ri or 16 ri, but the moon can light an area of over 800 ri. Thus, although the various stars have their light, it cannot equal that of the moon. Again, there's all these analogies and similes and all saying the same thing. Even if we were to assemble 100, 1,000, 10,000, or 1,000,000 stars, as well as all the stars from the world of the 4 continents, from a major world system, and from all the worlds of the 10 directions, their light could not equal the light of a single moon. How then could the light of only one star equal the light of the moon? Similarly, though we gather together all the various sutras, such as the Flower Garland Sutra, the Agama Sutras, the Correct and Equal Sutras, the Wisdom, Nirvana, Mahavajrayana, and Meditation Sutras, they could never equal even a single character of the Lotus Sutra. This is equal, the key word, equal. In other words, they are not the ultimate teaching. They'll help you understand and get to the ultimate teachings, but they are not the ultimate teaching. Within the minds of all human beings, there exist the 3 categories of illusions, of thought and desire, of illusions innumerable as particles of dust and sand, and of illusions about the true nature of existence, as well as karma created by the 10 evil acts or the 5 cardinal sins, all of which are like a dark night. The Flower Garland and the other various sutras are like stars in this dark night, while the Lotus Sutra is like the moon. For those who have resolute mind and conviction in the Lotus Sutra, but whose resolute mind and conviction is not deep, it is as though a half moon were lighting the darkness. But for those who have profound resolute mind and conviction, it is as though a full moon were illuminating the night. On a night where there is no moon, but only the light of the stars, strong men or robust individuals may walk abroad, but elderly people and women will find it impossible to do so. But when there is a full moon, even women and the elderly may walk about anywhere they please, proceeding to a banquet or going to meet others. Similarly, in the various sutras it is said that the bodhisattvas and ordinary persons of great capacity can attain enlightenment. But for persons of the 2 vehicles, ordinary people, women and evil men, or people in the latter age, us, who are elderly and lazy, and do not observe the precepts, no assurance is given that they can ever attain rebirth in the Pure Land or achieve Buddhahood. Again now, this can be confusing, and I'm going to attribute this to poor translation. The Pure Land he's talking about now, the Buddhahood he's talking about now, are not what he just referenced in the previous paragraph. This is not so of the Lotus Sutra, however. Even persons of the 2 vehicles, women and evil men, are assured of becoming Buddhas. How could that not be a statement of just all human beings today? This is why I say humanity today, in the latter day of the law, is the Sangha. All of us. We are the bodhisattvas of the earth. Some of us are not even practicing Buddhism. This is our fault. We're not propagating it enough. This is not to riddle you with guilt. I'm just pointing out that the Sangha is the Sangha. It's all sentient human beings. We need to help one another. Who needs more help than somebody who doesn't even know they need help? Not all of us are suited to do that, by the way. To say nothing of bodhisattvas and ordinary persons of great capacity. So if you're practicing, you're a bodhisattva of great capacity. You and I are studying together in this Sangha of humanity. And you and I have had the good fortune of coming across the Lotus Sutra and the various teachings and studying. We're practicing. We are at whatever level you and I and all of the people that we know that are doing this are all at our own specific level. And the more we practice and the more we study and the more we influence others to seek to do the same, whether it be actual Buddhist practice or just leaning them toward their mind moving toward Buddhist practice, anything we do to lead them toward their Buddha nature, this is our Bodhisattva practice. All right? Again, the moon shines more brightly around dawn than it does in the early evening, and is more luminous in autumn and winter than spring and summer. In a similar fashion, the Lotus Sutra is even more effective in bringing benefit to living beings in the latter day of the law than it is during the 2,000 years that make up the former and middle days of the law. Chloe, my dog is taken to cleaning itself, and I don't think you appreciate the sound in the background of what she's doing. So, stop to that. Now, Nichiren adopts the question and answer format we're all familiar with. Question: what passages of proof can you offer? Once again, here comes the scholarship, right? So Nichiren, answer. The truth is plain to see. I'm glad he said that, because sometimes that's my attitude when I'm discussing this, right? It's plain to see. Look, open your eyes. Please don't take that as being condescending in any way. I'm just excited about how obvious this teaching is if you open your eyes. And I think that's why we have all of this opening of the eyes. Remember the previous Gosho we read. Anyway, back to this. In addition, this chapter later states as follows, quote, after I have passed into extinction in the last 500-year period, you must spread it, the Lotus Sutra, abroad widely throughout Jambudvipa and never allow it to be cut off. I'm jumping ahead a little bit in this, am I? Not. This is what I just got done saying, is that we are all the Sangha, and that we need to spread it abroad widely throughout Jambudvipa, the entire world, and never allow it to be cut off. We can't allow it to die off simply through laziness or through lack of effort, right? This passage from the sutra, which states that it must be widely spread throughout Jambudvipa, the southern continent, when 2,000 years have passed, expresses the same meaning as the third analogy of the moon. The great teacher Kompon, also known as the great teacher Dengyo, was referring to this idea when he stated in his commentary, quote, the former and middle days are almost over, and the latter day is near at hand. Now indeed is the time when the one vehicle of the Lotus Sutra will prove how perfectly it fits the capacities of all the people, end quote. The capacities of all the people. All the people. And our current capacity in the latter day is the bodhisattvas of the earth. We are all the Sangha. The benefits conferred by the Lotus Sutra surpass those of the various other sutras, even during the 1,000 years of the former day of the law and the 1,000 years of the middle day of the law. But when the spring and summer of the 2,000 years of the former and middle days are over, and the autumn and winter of the latter day of the law have come, now, then the light of this moon will shine more brightly than ever. Fourth is the analogy of the sun. When the moon appears in the sky where the stars are shining, although its light surpasses that of the stars do not actually lose their light. But isn't this what I was saying about the teachings don't go away? They don't lose their light. They're still there. But when the sun appears, not only do the stars lose their light, but the moon too is deprived of its light and loses its glow. Not because they're no longer there, right? The sutras preached before the Lotus Sutra are like the stars. The theoretical teachings of the Lotus Sutra are like the moon. And the lifespan chapter is like the sun. When the lifespan chapter makes its appearance, then the moon of the theoretical teaching cannot equal it, to say nothing of the stars that are previous sutras. I think if you read this carefully, I don't know how careful, it's pretty obvious what he's saying, don't you think? During the night, the time of the stars and the moon, people do not pursue their pursue their occupations, but when dawn comes, they invariably go about their various tasks. Similarly, while the earlier sutras, or the theoretical sutras of the Lotus Sutra prevail, it will be difficult for people to free themselves from the sufferings of birth and death. But once the lifespan chapter of the essential teaching makes its appearance, then people are certain to free themselves from the sufferings of birth and death. The lifespan of the Tathagata chapter is the opening of the second half of the Lotus Sutra chapters, and in it is where Buddha Shakyamuni explains and drops the big bomb on all of his students that this personage that they're calling Buddha is just a manifestation of the Buddha mind that we all have inherent, that it's always been there, it always be there. All we need to do is awaken to it. This is the significance of that chapter. This is why Nichiren is singling it out, and he's showing that in the Medicine King chapter, it's also obviated. So it's in the Lotus Sutra itself. I will omit a discussion of the other 6 of the 10 analogies. In addition to these 10, there are many other analogies in this chapter. Among them is that of a traveler who finds a ship when he wishes to make a crossing. The meaning of this analogy is that the sea of the sufferings of birth and death, the sutras preached before the Lotus Sutra, are like rafts or small boats. Although they can carry people from one shore in the realm of birth and death to another shore in that same realm, they are incapable of carrying them across the sea of birth and death to the distant shore of perfect bliss, of Buddhahood, of Buddha mind, enlightenment, awakening. These sutras are like the small boats of our world that can go from Tsukushi to the Bando region, or from Kamakura to Enoshima, but cannot go as far as China. A China ship, on the other hand, is fully capable of going all the way from Japan to China without difficulty. He's just showing the difference in fortitude of different sailing vessels, right? They can all sail, but they all don't have the same capability. Again, there is the analogy that reads, quote, like the poor finding riches, end quote. The lands represented by the sutras preached before the Lotus Sutra are impoverished lands, and their inhabitants are like hungry spirits. The Lotus Sutra, on the other hand, is a veritable mountain of riches, and its inhabitants are truly wealthy, or are wealthy. Enough. Question. When you say that the lands of the sutras preached before the Lotus Sutra are impoverished lands, what passage of scripture are you referring to? Well, scripture. What passage of scholarship are you referring to? Answer. The bestowal of prophecy, end quote, chapter of the Lotus Sutra states, suppose that someone coming from a land of famine should suddenly encounter a great king's feast. Concerning rebirth in the Pure Land and the attainment of Buddhahood by women, a passage from the sutra has this to say, If in the last 500-year period, after the Thus Come One has entered extinction, there is a woman who hears this sutra and carries out its practices as the sutra directs, when her life here on earth comes to an end, she will immediately go to the world of peace and delight, where the Buddha Amida dwells surrounded by the assembly of great bodhisattvas, and there will be born seated on a jeweled seat in the center of the lotus blossom. Now, this is hyperbole. I know some of you might hear that paragraph and go, oh, there it is, see, that's the Pure Land, that's Amida. What he's talking about is the transcendental, the transmigration of the human mind to the Buddha mind. This is an analogy, a hyperbole of what it is to release from all of this attachment and perceive clearly, awakened, what's really going on. The precious, amazing life process that is in each moment of our lives as we breathe and live it. Because the truth is that before and after don't exist. Death is death. It is the end of this perception, this experience of time. Without this human experience of time, there is no time. I know that's hard to grasp, but the more you study, the more this will start to make sense to you. Every now and again, it has knocked me down to consider how attached I am to the passage of time. It's just an illusion. So when your life here on earth comes to an end, doesn't mean that it needs to do we physically need to end in order to attain this pure land or enlightenment. This life here on earth is the passage of birth and death constantly from moment to moment, that we're instantiating our experience. This is our life on earth. This is the thing we transcend. This is the thing we let go of. We leave this personification of identity of each moment as a linear, permanent thing. And we shift our mind to a state of seeing this flow, this passage of time as an experience of this elongated moment of what it is like to perceive this experience of life. Life is about experiencing it. I'm going to say it again. Life doesn't happen to us. It happens for us. To accomplish what? Perceiving it. It's that simple. Any of you who've been through a huge trauma, especially an accident where you were injured and your life was truly threatened, and you woke up in ICU or surgery or however you recovered, your first moments, first of all, are disoriented. Where am I? What's going on? But immediately thereafter is just this intense appreciation that all you want to do is share that appreciation. And in come flying all your attachments and ego and all of that. But it takes time for that to start repenetrating you. Your first moments are I remember after a major surgery that I didn't expect to survive, I came out of it, I looked around, and then my first perceptions were that all of my problems that I entered surgery with were gone. And then I felt kind of lost. And then I just wanted to cry. I just wanted to thank people. That's all I wanted out of life. I didn't care about anything else. The care isn't even the right word. They just weren't in my attention. So this is what trying to say this in words is difficult. And this is 13th century, and this is a translation of 13th century. So be mindful of what's this is attempting to describe. Don't get locked into the words here, because that's not where the answer is, right? Okay, so that's almost 25 minutes. I'm going to have to cut this one off. The next question is, why do this sutra and this chapter in the sutra make a particular point of discussing rebirth into Pure Land by women? I just went into that a little bit, and we discussed a Gosho a few videos ago specifically about women. I think it was about menstruation. And women, if You have so much reason in all of the study of Buddhism. The Lotus Sutra is your greatest justification, amazing reason for being. So you of all should be the strongest bodhisattvas. My hat's off to you. Before I dive into that, I'm going to make that the subject of the next video. We'll stop here for now. Thanks again, as always, for participating. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I appreciate you, fellow bodhisattva, fellow Buddhist, fellow seeker. We are one. Thank you so much. See you next time.